-40 degrees. Cold enough to freeze the moisture in your breath before it even leaves the air in front of your face. Cold enough to kill an unprotected human being in under an hour. At -40, exposed skin begins to freeze in minutes. Your body starts shutting down the flow of blood to your fingers and toes, sacrificing them, just to keep the warm blood around your heart and brain alive a little longer. Now, take away everything you would use to fight it. No heating, no electricity, no coat from a store, no stored food waiting in a fridge, no hospital if it goes wrong. Just you, the endless dark of an ice age winter, and a world frozen solid in every direction for months at a time. Here's the honest truth. If you were dropped into that world right now, exactly as you are, you would very likely be dead before nightfall. Not from predators, not from starvation, from the cold alone. -40 does not care how clever you are, how strong you are, or how much you want to live. And yet, tens of thousands of years ago, humans with no technology, no metal, and no modern anything at all didn't just survive these winters. They thrived in them. For hundreds of thousands of years, generation after generation, in some of the harshest conditions this planet has ever thrown at us. The question is how? And the answer is a series of genius, desperate, brilliant inventions that are the only reason you are alive to wonder about it. Let's start with the first thing that would kill you: the cold touching your skin. We tend to picture early humans draped in a single crude animal skin, hunched and shivering. That picture is wrong, because around 40,000 years ago, humans invented something that changed the entire game. A tiny, simple tool that is quietly one of the most important objects in all of human history: the sewing needle. Thin slivers of bone, sharpened to a fine point, with a hole punched carefully through one end. It doesn't look like much. You could hold a dozen of them in your palm. But with a needle, humans could suddenly do something revolutionary. They could tailor. They could cut animal hides into specific, deliberate shapes and stitch them together into close-fitting, multi-layered clothing. And this is the difference between a blanket thrown over your shoulders and an actual coat. Fitted sleeves that seal at the wrist, closed seams that block the wind, layers of fur that trap warm air against the skin and hold it there, turning your own body heat into a shield. An Ice Age human in properly tailored clothing could walk out into a landscape that would kill you and me within the hour and be completely fine. They essentially invented the world's first extreme cold weather gear, out of nothing but bone and hide, and it worked so well that the basic design, layered, fitted, and fur-lined, is still exactly what we use to survive the coldest places on Earth today. When a modern explorer stands at the South Pole, they are wearing a high-tech version of an idea that is 40,000 years old. But clothing only keeps you alive while you're moving and generating heat. At night, when the temperature crashes even lower, you need something more. You need shelter. And this is where the story becomes genuinely extraordinary. Because in much of the Ice Age world, there was a serious problem. Out on the vast frozen plains of Eastern Europe and Northern Asia, there were no caves to shelter in. And worse, there were almost no trees, no wood to build with, no wood in a place where you desperately need to build a shelter and feed a fire, just to make it through a single night. So what do you build a house out of in a treeless, frozen wasteland? The answer is one of the most astonishing things in the entire human story. You build it out of the dead. Across these frozen plains, archaeologists have uncovered the remains of huge, circular huts built from the bones of mammoths. Not one or two of them, but dozens, spread across whole regions, deliberately stacked and arranged with real skill. Enormous curved tusks forming archways over the entrance. Giant leg bones standing as the walls. Heavy skulls set into the ground as the foundation. A single one of these structures could use the bones of more than 60 mammoths. Over that vast frame of bone, the builders draped heavy hides to seal out the screaming wind. And at the very center, they built a hearth. Think about what that actually means. In a place with no wood and no stone, humans hunted the largest and most dangerous land animals on the planet and then used their skeletons to build warm, permanent homes. These were not desperate little scrapes dug into the dirt. They were engineered structures, some arranged in what look like entire villages, built to last, and some of them have survived for over 20,000 years. Your ancestors looked out at a frozen wasteland that offered them nothing to build with, and they built neighborhoods out of giants. And burning away at the center of every one of those shelters was the single most important thing in the fight to survive: fire. Fire was everything. It was warmth, obviously, the raw difference between life and death on a -40 night. But it was so much more than heat. It was light. In a world where the sun barely rose above the horizon for months on end, it was a way to cook food, which unlocked far more calories from every meal and killed the parasites that could otherwise quietly finish you off. It was protection, holding hungry predators back at the edge of the dark. And maybe most importantly, it was the gathering point. The one warm circle where the entire group pulled in close, shared their body heat, and stayed alive together. In these bone shelters, the fire was often placed so that the curved walls reflected its warmth back inward, turning a frozen shell of bone and hide into something you could genuinely call cozy. So now you're clothed, you're sheltered, and you have fire. But there is still one thing left that will kill you, slowly and certainly, across a long winter. Starvation. Because in the depths of winter, there is almost nothing to eat. Nothing grows. Many of the animals have migrated far away or are hidden and hibernating. If you wait until winter arrives to start looking for food, you are already dead. So your ancestors did something that demanded they think months ahead into the future, a kind of planning we often assume they weren't capable of. They prepared. Through the richer months of summer and autumn, when food was everywhere, they hunted and gathered far more than they could possibly eat in the moment, and they preserved the surplus. They dried meat and fish in the sun and wind until it could last for months without rotting. In the coldest regions, they used the frozen ground itself as an enormous natural freezer, digging deep storage pits down into the permafrost to keep meat fresh through the darkest months. And every single animal they killed was used completely, from nose to tail. The meat eaten fresh or dried for later. The fat carefully rendered down into a dense, calorie-rich fuel to keep bodies burning warm. The bones cracked open for the rich marrow hidden inside. Nothing was ever wasted, because a wasted meal in October was a death sentence in February. So that is the survival toolkit. Tailored clothing, bone shelters, fire, stored food. Genius. Every piece of it. But there is one more theory about how some ancient humans survived these winters, and it is so strange that it barely sounds real. Some of them may not have stayed awake through winter at all. They may have slept through it. At a site in northern Spain, researchers studying the fossilized bones of early humans found something they truly did not expect. The bones showed unusual seasonal patterns, disruptions, and pauses in their growth that closely matched the exact signatures found in the bones of animals that hibernate. And the pattern hints at something almost unbelievable, that during the very worst, darkest, most foodless stretch of the winter, these early humans may have slowed their bodies right down into a deep, sleep-like state, lowering their heart rate, burning slowly through the fat they had so carefully built up in the autumn, effectively hibernating, just like a bear, and waking up again only when the world began to thaw. It is still debated, and we can't be certain of it, but sit with what it suggests for just a moment. That buried somewhere deep in our past, the human body may once have been capable of something we have completely and utterly lost: the ability to power itself down, ride out the killing cold in a long sleep, and rise again in spring. So let's put it all together and really see what your ancestors were up against and what they actually did about it. They faced a season that dropped to -40. That plunged the entire world into months of near total darkness. That froze all their water and killed off nearly all their food. A season that should, by every rule of nature, have wiped a fragile, hairless, tropical ape like us straight off the face of the planet. And instead, we beat it. We invented needles and sewed ourselves armor against the cold. We hunted the largest creatures alive and built warm homes out of their bones. We captured fire and used it to hold back the endless dark. We taught ourselves to see months into the future and store food against the famine we knew was coming. And we may have even learned to sleep straight through the worst of it, like the animals all around us. Every one of those winters, for hundreds of thousands of years, was a test that could have ended our entire story right there. And every single year your ancestors passed it. They stood and looked at the deadliest season on Earth, a season that could kill them in under an hour, and they simply refused to die. You will complain about the cold this winter. You'll turn up the heat, pull on a jacket, and forget all about it within seconds. They walked into -40 with nothing but bone, hide, fire, and each other. And the fact that they won every single time is the only reason you are warm enough right now to have ever heard this story at all.